Hey guys, Level Cap here. Today I want to talk about what I've learned to like about Battlefield 1 and sort of as a veteran gamer and someone who's put a lot of hours into Battlefield 1 at this point, but not really loved the game from the start. I've found ways of really enjoying the game a lot more than I initially did. Part of that, of course, is because the game's continued improvement and balance and many changes and tweaks made to the engine in general, but the other part is sort of realizing what I like and don't like about Battlefield 1 and just avoiding the things that I don't like. Now, I've talked at length in the past about game bloating, where big AAA games like Battlefield and Call of Duty have to continuously add features to stay competitive and sound really good for marketing teams and be able to create cool ads around their new games with new features. The problem, of course, with this is that added features or added stuff to a game often creates a situation in which developers are unable to balance or put the amount of time that they want into each feature. So what we're left with is, in Battlefield, a huge number of maps, many of which are not great, a huge number of game modes, many of which are not properly balanced or fun, and a huge number of weapons, many of which are not particularly enjoyable to use. So a novice player might get into the game, have no idea which maps, guns, or game modes are good, start playing and really not have a good time. They're like, why do people even like this game? I'm dying to mortar spam, grenade spam, and I'm using crappy guns while other players are just wasting me constantly. Like, what is going on here? And it takes a long time to sort of organize that stuff and figure out to you personally what is enjoyable and what isn't enjoyable and how to avoid the non-enjoyable parts of the game. And often we've had the community sort of self-regulate that with player-run servers, only running good maps or good game modes, but that hasn't really taken over with Battlefield 1 as much. You notice in games like Counter-Strike, when you matchmake, the matchmaking time for the less popular maps is extremely long because players get to choose the maps that they want to play and just play the more enjoyable parts of the game. In Battlefield 1, you kind of have to cycle through a lot of really bad maps unless you want to actively avoid it. And that's something that I've started doing as a player, is just avoiding the stuff in Battlefield 1 I don't enjoy, and I'm finding that I'm having a much better time playing the game in general. Often this means leaving a server if the map rotation goes over to a map I know I'm not going to enjoy, or a game mode or something like that, or if I stick around for the game mode to try and see how it plays out and it turns out that sure enough the round is going to be heavily imbalanced, or one team's going to get heavy air dominance and it's not going to be fun to play infantry or fight against it. Sometimes I'm just not in the mood to try and fight a losing battle all the way through and then lose at the end of the game. I've done it too many times, so I'll just back out of the server and try and find a better balanced game or a game playing on a map that I enjoy. Sure, it takes a little bit of time, maybe 4 or 5 minutes to find the right server, the game mode, but I think it's worth it rather than just sticking in the same server that rotates through maps that you do like and then don't like. Now, of course, this does lead to another issue, which I've noticed is much more prevalent in Battlefield 1 than previous Battlefield games, and that's because of the quick match system that has really kind of dominated how you get into a match in Battlefield. You just hit quick match, it puts you in a game, there you go. The problem with quick match is that it often puts you into a server where somebody dropped out of. It's a full server, somebody leaves, usually because their team is getting absolutely dominated or they know they're not going to win that round. And so you join the server, you take their place, you get on the team and you realize, oh my god, we are getting absolutely blasted and this isn't an enjoyable experience. Sometimes you got to stay in a server long enough to the point where the round will switch over and the teams will get better balanced. But this is a pretty big issue I'm noticing with the game right now. Even though the latest patch implemented a new team balancing feature, I feel like this patch was designed maybe more for console play, as I don't see a huge discrepancy in player counts on teams on PC for whatever reason. I'm not really sure what that reason might be, but at its current place, it doesn't appear to balance teams based on player skill or how one team is doing over another. This was something that was much more common in Battlefield 4, and both systems had their negatives. In Battlefield 4, a lot of servers ran mods or plugins that would auto-balance the teams mid-round or at any point during the game, and this could be annoying, especially if you're fighting really hard to win on your team and then all of a sudden it puts you on the enemy team. That could be a bit annoying for you, but in general, it seemed like it tried to balance out the games better and it did a better job of it. So Battlefield 1's taking the approach of like, you know what, we're not going to switch you from the winning team if you worked really hard to win. We're just going to let you continue winning. And I've been in too many servers where the winning team just continues winning and winning and winning round after round without it being balanced. So I really think DICE could do a lot more work to try and implement a better team balancer out there. There's a lot of people opposed to mid-round switching, especially if you're doing well, and I understand their reasons there, but it's something that I think DICE should still look into and maybe play around with. Despite that, though, being in a game where you're on the losing team, getting enjoyment out of that is an important tool, an important thing that you're going to need to do in Battlefield 1 to enjoy the experience. Now, for me personally, I like being able to kill my enemy and kill lots of my enemy. If I'm in a game or a mode where I can't control that, or the enemy team is dominating so heavily that I'm just going to die repeatedly regardless of my skill or how well I'm doing that day or how good my accuracy is on point. If you're playing a game like Operations where everything gets funneled down and sometimes the enemy team has just such a stronghold or such a strong choke point that regardless of skill you're going to end up dying a lot, that can be unenjoyable. So I'll try and avoid those situations a lot. I've actually stopped matchmaking as much in Operations, or if I do, I matchmake very tentatively in Operations. I'm like, is this going to be a good game? Nope. Okay, backing out. So I'll do a lot of sort of picking and choosing my Operations rounds when I play in them, but I find Conquest is a good way for the smart player to get a lot of enjoyment out of it, even if you are losing. Getting good or proficient with a lot of different weapons, vehicles, or tools can enhance the experience. Getting good on cavalry, in tanks, airplanes, or at least at a point where you're relatively proficient with them and have that as an option is a good way to open up your combat options in a round. If you notice the enemy team is dominating in air and it doesn't seem like they have any real opposition, but you're a decent fighter pilot, spawn in a fighter plane and get up there and have some fun fighting them down. If nobody's using the cavalry on your team because it's sort of an acquired skill, now that the cavalry is so much better as a unit, you can spawn on that, ride past the enemy, hit them from behind, flank them, backcap points, harass them and annoy them. I'm finding I'm having a lot more fun playing the cavalry class now than I used to in the past. So that's a good option to go to. And of course, tanks, if you really are being choke pointed hard, you can get into like mortar tanks or mortar land ships and just really piss off the enemy from range. I'm not generally advocating mortar gameplay in general, but there are things you can do to try and get some enjoyment out of a situation in which your team is just being slaughtered. I also think this is why people tend to complain about the sniper epidemic in Battlefield 1, where one team is losing really hard because when you hit the front lines, you're just getting slaughtered. Lots of people start to play the sniper class so that they can stay in the back lines, sort of take a breather and take some shots at the enemy. You might not really push the front line up, but you're going to get more enjoyment out of it. And that could be seen as sort of a fundamental problem of Battlefield games in general, is that people go and play the classes that they're going to enjoy rather than the classes that might move the front line or push the game up or change the game mode a bit. And that could be seen as a fundamental design flaw of Battlefield, but I always advocate for having fun in a video game, and if winning the game is fun for you, then you can work on that, but if getting kills and having fun combat experiences is fun for you, then you can also work on that. Now, the other part of enjoying Battlefield 1 is using good weapons. In previous Battlefield games, people complained that too many of the assault rifles were too similar to each other. Granted, most 5.56 round rifles with 30 round magazines are all going to perform pretty similarly in real life as well, but for whatever reason, people felt like all the guns felt too similar in Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4. They wanted more difference. And so Battlefield 1 added that. There's a huge amount of weapon diversity in Battlefield 1 in terms of how the guns actually perform and feel. The problem with this, of course, is that I found in many weapon classes, there's just some guns that really stand out as being far superior to other weapons, and I ended up just using my favorite guns. You pick some of the best guns, you use those guns, you get some kills, you enjoy it. Now, I could mix things up a lot more in previous Battlefield games because so many of the weapons were similar. I could use an AUG, an L85, an M416. They all were decent guns and I could all do really well with all of them. In Battlefield 1, the time to kill drops way off depending on what kind of weapon class you're using or what type of weapon in a specific category. And that can make it really difficult to get multiple kills in a row. My playstyle is getting good flanks, outplaying other players, but also being able to deal with multiple opponents. There's nothing more annoying to me than losing because my gun just isn't up to the task of dealing with 2 follow-up enemies. Switching to a sidearm can sometimes pull it off, but I get annoyed when I have a weapon that just can't deal out the kind of damage that I've set myself up to deal out. So running with the new SMG-08, which I would argue is somewhat overpowered compared to other guns out there, it allows me to deal with many opponents, many follow-up kills. Running with the SMLE, even though there's some decent other sniper rifles out there, that rifle has 10 rounds in a magazine. It's got a great sweet spot. It's just my go-to sniper rifle for so many situations. The RSC deals out a huge amount of damage for the medic class and can deal with follow-up threats. You got to be accurate to use it, but there's just some guns that for me stand out way above the rest of them and perform so much better and have faster time to kills. And so I sort of focus on those weapons. I'm not as interested anymore in providing a huge amount of diversity in the weapons that I use unless I'm specifically making a video about a certain kind of gun. I'm more interested in using weapons that I'm going to enjoy and that I'm going to do well with. Battlefield 1 has left me with less options that are viable for dominating your opponents and just more quirky and weird options that you can kind of use but might not do so well with. So although I could boil that all down to saying use guns that you're good with, I mean, really it's about doing research, figuring out what some of the most effective weapons are, getting good and proficient with those weapons, and then enjoying it and not being afraid to switch it up when you need to. Analyzing your situation, figuring, okay, assault's going to be great here, medic's going to be better, there's a lot of medium range combat and teammates around, or I just need to really dominate at range and I can't play on the front lines right now, I'm going to use sniper. So figuring out, analyzing the situation, and doing what is going to provide you with the most enjoyment is how I have started to play the game, with a little bit less of a focus on trying to win the game. That used to be my focus, of not enjoying the round if we're not going to win, and I just have to kind of put that on the back burner and focus on what's going to be fun for me. I enjoy the combat, I enjoy the action, and I focus on that now. So it's been sort of a long learning and growing experience with Battlefield 1. I still think the game is flawed in the sense that novice players getting into it are probably going to go through a lot of the poorer options that the game offers them before they figure out what maps and modes play well or what guns are good and enjoyable to play with. But hopefully that can be lessened by some of the videos I've made on this channel and whatnot. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you guys think about Battlefield 1 right now, those of you who have been playing the game this whole time. What do you guys do to get the most enjoyment out of this game right now? And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.